quiz, and I'm very happy again to take you for the third time in throughout this webinar. I think the first one we talk about how to write effective introductions, and the second section we talk about how your results should be presented. And today, very happy to also walk you through how discussions look like in a typical research lab. Share my screen. Okay, so I want to confirm you can clearly see from my screen and we can proceed. Okay, good. So today we are going to look at one of the interesting aspects of scientific research where we talk about discussion and conclusion. So a lot of people do scientific writing. Anytime I look at it, I'll tell them, go and read your conclusion, go and read your discussion. How do you go by it? So I want to also remind you that this webinar series is being brought to you by the Bio Research Enthusiasts in collaborative Allied Research and Data Science Institute. And I'm Ebenezer Senu. Currently, I'm the founder of Allied Research and Data Science Institute in collaborating with my colleague Solomon Apobi, who is also a research scientist at KNST IBR Collaborative Center, where they are doing a lot of clinical trials. This institute is also led by Prof. Alex, the Pro Vice Chancellor of the University, and they are doing a lot of stuff. And if you are interested in research, that's one of the places that you can look at. So I'm currently at the University of Texas at Dallas, where I'm doing my PhD in molecular and cellular biology. Currently, I'm in the NESCO's lab where I'm looking at how some bacteria grow in response to difference growth or different sugars. So it's 6 hours time zone, so it's now 12 here, and I'm sure it says in Ghana. So I also talk about earlier that if you are still not following us on our pages, make sure you follow us. Because after this webinar, we organize different webinars that you can benefit from freely. So you could follow us on LinkedIn, X, then or Facebook to see some of our upcoming webinars or opportunities that you can type into it. As usual, most often our webinars are more interactive, so as usual, that's what we are going to do today. So previously, we've talked about some of the aspects of scientific paper, where we talk about the introduction. I was happy to take you to about, then I also talk about the results, the way I took you. And today I'm telling you about the discussion. So it means this is the typical format of scientific paper. We call it EMERALD. That is introduction, methodology, which I hope someone took you through, the results and the discussion. They are very key components of a scientific paper. So from here, let's still go back to understand what we did previously and what we are going to do today. So you could see that this is a skeleton of a scientific paper. Like we have skeleton of human being, we also have skeleton of scientific paper. So you could see that from the top, you see we have the emerald, that is the introduction to the methodology, to the result, and the discussion. What do you see here? I don't know whether someone can see something. What skeleton can we see? Or how do you see this skeleton? Can someone tell us what we can see if you look at this skeleton? What can you see from the picture? Kind of put it in the chat or just on mute to talk. Or we have to understand the skeleton. It's a better from what we've done previously. What can we see in the skeleton of a scientific paper? Anyone?
Hello, Vanessa, can you hear me, please?
Yes, I cannot hear you.
All right, so what I can see is that the introduction is like it's a big, I don't know if it's a trapezium or whatever. It's
Mhm.
big, and then the discussion also. So my interpretation is that introduction cover the broad aspects of the research as well as the discussion. So you narrow it when you get to the method and the result. When you get to the discussion too, you discuss the entire work you did. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So yes, it's why the bigger part of the work. Yes, any other question? Thank you very much, Henry. Any other question? Yeah, so as Henry said, we talk about introduction. So the key thing we talk about is that after we've looked at the size, we look at the final shape. So if you remember in the introduction, we said in introduction, we kind of start broad, okay? Then, for example, when we are talking about, the other time we use some case study, let's say prevalence of COVID. We talk about general, what is COVID and the rest. Then we narrow it down to specific research. But the interesting thing is that this is opposite to discussion. So you could see discussion is from a more specific base and to a general one. Again, in the introduction from the paragraph, we started with a broader paragraph. Then we narrow it down to specific research. But if you come to the discussion, we are going to do the opposite. We are going to start with what did we found? What are we comparing it to? What is the meaning in compared to what other scientific research? So we say that the opposite of introduction is discussion. Here we are going to justify why we have these results. We talk about results the other time, but here it's very, very important. So introduction is just the opposite of discussion, or discussion just opposite to the introduction. Acts from introduction, in that aspect of writing, you start broad and narrow it down to your specific what aim or hypothesis. In discussion, we are going to start with specific findings, then we generate it or we relate it for broader literature. One thing we're also going to do is that, for example, during the introduction, we said that if we are talking about prevalence, we start from prevalence, global prevalence, to African prevalence, to, let's say, prevalence in Ghana. But in discussion, it's the opposite. We are going to look at the prevalence that we have in our study compared to other related papers in Ghana, compared to other papers in Africa, compared to global. So it zoom out in the discussion section, which is really opposite to the introduction. If you're on the same level, put one in the chat, then we can zoom into what we have today. Great, great, great. Yes. So basically, we are saying that when we talk about MR of scientific paper, the introduction, that one is more general. So it's really start wide with general statement about the importance of the area of study. Then we progressively report what is known about the area, what is still unknown, that is our problem, and then we state the specific focus of the paper. That's what we talk about when we are dealing with the introduction. Then in the middle of the paper, the result is just you are presenting it to what we have, the methods, what you are using it to put. So those ones are kind of in line. But today in the discussion, we are going to begin with what? Specific research findings. So what data did you find? Then we then connect it to a broader literature. So in this case, we move from more specific content of the research to a larger field because we've now found something in our work. Then we want to compare it to what is outside. So your discussion is your bargaining power, ask the topic study, because if you're not able to justify your result, why you have that result, it means that it's become irrelevant. No matter the result you have, how you present it is how your scientific community is going to accept it. It's like you have a product you want to market for people to buy. So how you are going to discuss it or market it, that will see whether it get published or whether you projects will be accepted for you to get A to graduate. If not, they'll give you C or give you B. Because you have to be able to discuss any data that you have. So the discussion is where one dives into the meaning, important, and relevant of your result. So it means that if you don't understand your result, you cannot even proceed to the discussion. So for the past years as a data scientist, what I do is that when I handle someone's data and I'm not able to do the discussion, what I'll do is that I'll first take the person to step by step of the meaning of the results. Then I'll tell you, this is the meaning of the result. This is what you are going to discuss. So it means before you can do your discussion, you have to understand your result. What are the statistical implications, significance of the result? Because it's focused on explaining and evaluating what you found, showing how it relates to your literature and paper or any topic, and making arguments in support of overall finding. You have to be able to make argument that yes, what I found is really the true information. Maybe someone has found a different the opposite of what you found, but in your discussion, you are going to yes, based on this scientific pathway principles, your result you found is also true. And it's all in the discussion you are going to do this. It doesn't mean that someone has found that, oh, high body temperature is associated with COVID severity. So you too, you find the opposite. So you are not going to justify that and publish. So recently there's been concern of publication bias, where people tend to publish only positive results, neglecting negative results. Negative results are also very necessary in order to carry out a higher level of research called the systematic review. No matter the result you find, you have to be able to see where and the errors are coming from, then you discuss it. So I have to also repeat that it is not a second section of results. Your discussion is not a second section of results. So you see people doing discussion, they are repeating results. We don't want to see result there. So how do we go by it? That's why today we are here to dive more into it. Discussion is not a second section of result. We don't repeat any result there. We put those things in English. How we describe results are different. So we are saying that in discussion, sometimes we have some key paragraph letters. We start with first paragraph, that is a brief recap of the hypothesis and key results. So after that, I'll zoom into a Word document and show you some of our published works where we've done some of these different kind of discussion. Mostly the first paragraph, we re-emphasize your hypothesis, your study aim, and summarize all your key results, not your whole result, just key thing that is related to your research aim or hypothesis. Then we then move to another paragraph where we state each of the results and justify it and do proper discussion of it. Then after you are done discussing each objectives under different what paragraph, we want to see clinical implication. Mostly people, it's recommended I have clinical implication. What does your dissolve matter? What is the clinical what? So we and the biomedical research, we mostly want to see what is the clinical implication of our finding. Then the limitation. What are some of the limitations? We will get to know that even the best result has a limitation. Limitation does not mean that your result is not good to publish. It's something to bear out for the future. Then we look at recommendations. What are the future steps? So mostly these are some of the headings under the discussion. So let's see. What not to include in your discussion? Again, don't introduce a new result. As I said, discussion is not a result section. We are just going to explain and justify why your result is relevant. You only discuss the data that you have already reported in your result section. We don't introduce a new result in the discussion. Again, don't make inflated claims. Over-interpretation, speculation is not here. Your voice should not be that high or should not be that low. It should be intermediate. Or we should not undermine your research. So for example, some people kind of, if you look at the limitation they've stated, it's like they're undermining the work, the credibility. No, there's a way to state it to not undermine your work. Although limitation does not mean that you are stating something that is completely throwing your work into the dustbin. Your tone is very, very important. So I would say that if you move from the classroom to the scientific writing, you have to learn proper English. Whatever English you are using in the classroom is, we don't do those English. And all comes from a lot of practice and reading scientific papers. So when you want to do a proper discussion, you have to first organize your work. Mostly organization of each paragraph. So you know that when we are talking about the introduction, the organization of paragraph or introduction was based on some of the themes that we were talking about. For example, the prevalence themes, the factors themes, those things. But here, discussion, each paragraph should be based or subheadings should be based on your specific what objectives. Because at the end, in a typical thesis, so after that, I'll show you some of the thesis discussion. You have to create your discussion according to your specific objective. So you have, after you've stated your summary, then sub headings in the discussion. You have your objective one, then you discuss the result that you have under that. So the organization of discussion is just basically based on what your objectives. So it's either you are using unstructured format as we use in manuscripts. That one, the main result or specific objective is just based on paragraph. So if you move from one paragraph to another paragraph, you see that they are discussing different results. We've already talked about summarizing your keyword finding in before you start. So before you start, you have to first introduce some key finding because we want to write scientific paper in a way that if someone jumps straight to discussion and start reading, the person will still understand your work. That is why you have to state your research program, your study aim, and major findings as a summary. Then you can now move into your discussion proper. Again, you don't just repeat all your data that you've already reported in the result. This is very, very important because you've seen a number of people reporting what data result in discussion. What we are going to discuss is just your key result. You don't have to discuss every data that you've presented in your result. And again, mostly the key summary is just one paragraph, summarizing all this, everything, your research program, your aim, your major findings should just be one paragraph. Then when you are done, so for example, these are some of the sentences that you can use. After you've introduced your research program and major findings, then you can say that, oh, this study find out COVID, prevalence of COVID-19 was this, and factors such as this was associated. That's the result indicate that, or the study demonstrated the relationship like that. The data suggests like, these are some of the introduction. And these key phrases, again, they are not in the classroom. When you want to come to the research for, that's where you come to learn more of this. That will better your writings. Then you now come to interpretation. Give your interpretations. So you have to know that for each paragraph, restate your key findings and give interpretations. The meaning of your result may seem obvious to you. You may think you know the result, but you have to know that you have to what? Consider your readers. They don't know what you have. They don't know the scientific principle theories you've read. That is why you have to what? Show them how exactly they are, the relevance of it. Maybe someone has read that, oh, high body temperature is associated with COVID, and you find out that when you have claims to support it, that's where you back it up. That is your interpretation of the results. And you might want to identify some correlations, patterns, or relationship among the data. So from the results, you've seen that trend. So in the discussion, you're going to bring those things up that, yes, this is likely to this. Anytime you see this, likely to this. You are just giving meaning that's significant to your results. You are discussing whether the result met your expectation or support the hypothesis. If not, you have to always justify it. You have to also discuss. So after you stated, you discuss and compare. So as well as giving your own interpretation, you have to make sure that you relate your result back to the literature. So you could see that first, you have to make sure you state your results, give it meaning, then you compare to the literature. What are you going to see? The discussion should show how your findings fit with existing knowledge. Whether what you found, is it similar to what has been reported, or you've brought a new insight? And what consequence does it have? So you are going to compare to someone's work. If there's no one's work, you are going to discuss it based on some of the core scientific principles. You contextualize your findings within previous research theories. Again, you explain any unexpected result and evaluating their significance. It doesn't mean that what you found is not the same thing as reported, so you cannot justify it. So in the discussion that you are going to what? Justify those kind of results. Or what are the alternate explanations? You make arguments of your position. Whether it is similar to previous studies, then you argue that yes, this is similar. If not, you have to argue why your result is different. So some of the possible sentences that you can say, this result build on existing evidence that, oh, high body temperature is associated with what? COVID infection and like that. So this kind of result become very easy because already it's the same thing in literature. So it become very easy to discuss. Or the data contribute to a clearer understanding of diseases. The results do not fit with the theory that there's someone that's proposed a theory. Now you've come to discover that no, it doesn't fit. Your experiment provides a new insight into the relationship between this. Maybe no one has done this study in Ghana. You are the first person that has done it. So you have to tell them, yes, this is the first study that's computed data on how blah, 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 blah. Yeah. While previous research has focused on this, this research demonstrates that why is this? Maybe if previous studies are just looking at temperature, you've come to see that, oh, how someone walk even affect the person thinking. So it becomes your new way. Or maybe the study contradicts previous someone's work. You have to explain it, discuss it. Then when we are done with the discussion, the next subtheme is the clinical implications. What is the principal implication of this finding? Whether you find the same thing or you not find it, what does it mean for the public health persons, for the health professionals, for the individuals? What is the implications? You need to give that. Then you acknowledge the limitations. You have to know that even the best research has limitations. In fact, acknowledging limitations is important to demonstrate your credibility. And you have to know that it's not about listing your errors, but it's about providing a great picture of what can and cannot be controlled from your study. Limitation might be due to, for example, your research design. So we could know that, for example, when we use an observational study design like cross-sectional studies, case control studies, cohort studies, they don't establish a causal relationship or cause-effect relationship. So that becomes the design, the kind of design you use becomes a limitation, which you must justify it. Or the methodology that you use becomes a limitation. You have to justify it. Although you use that method, you find this result. You have to justify that this methodology or this approach you use might affect the result. What are the obstacles that you found? So the limitation is the opportunity for you to bring some of those things up so that someone could build upon those things for another research. Maybe you use cross-section and then this you acknowledge is not a limitation, then you further recommend that future studies should use more of prospective or single random control trial. Because sometimes we look at previous studies limitation to do a new research. So it becomes very, very easy for someone to come and look at your paper, look at the limitation, and use it to do what? A new research to contribute to the statistics. Well, common limitations act as said, sometimes to people because of money. So in most of the developing countries, you see because of money, they cannot even buy reagent to carry out their experiment. So instead of them to use 100 samples, they turn up using 10. In that case, you acknowledge that, yes, the sample size was inadequate, which might limited what the generalization of the data. So most people in developing countries always use this one. It doesn't mean that sample size is always the same. So I've been seeing people always write the sample size, sample size. Even if they had adequate sample size, they will still write sample size. Sample size is just one of them. Or you encountered a problem when gathering or analyzing the data. Then you have to explain how it influenced your results. Maybe you are going for data from uh, some ethnic group community, and because of their lifestyle, it kind of affects how confident they give you the data. It might affect the data. It might bias the data because maybe the practices they have, some of them may even tend to give you wrong answers to some of the questions. It becomes a limitation. So you have to acknowledge that the fact that, oh, this, how this, it affect how you even organize the data. Maybe the data you were supposed to take it at this time point, but you took it at this different time point is a limitation, which we must acknowledge for future studies. Some co-founding variables that you are not able to control for. So recently we've done some clinical trials where we saw that vitamin D levels is able to have a lot of improved adequate benefits in maternal care. For example, prevent reducing STI, reducing adverse maternal outcomes, and even improving vitamin D levels. We didn't control for some co-founders. In that case, we have to acknowledge them in the steady hot limitations. So any co-founder, because of, for example, funding, you're supposed to measure this parameter, you're supposed to measure this parameter to see how they co-effect. But you're unable to do that, you have to state them as a limitation after the discussion. So you could see that the generality of the result is limited by the reliability of the data is impacted by due to lack of data on this. The result can it's just kind of stating some of the limitations, some of the things that could affect your work. It doesn't mean that this one you are totally disqualifying your work. You are just stating it in a nice way that, oh, this is a possibility which could influence the results. But it doesn't mean that your work is irrelevant. There are two things. Then you can now zoom into your conclusion. Conclusion is very, very key. So most often I see people's conclusion is like they are repeating results. Again, let me emphasize that conclusion is not a repetition of results. Conclusion is just what? Projecting your key findings. What are you concluding at? I'm concluding that yes, high body temperature influence COVID infection. A simple tense English. You see someone still saying results that the COVID patient has higher or had higher body temperature. P is not a conclusion. Conclusion, what are you concluding on? What is your main take home, the take home message? That is the meaning of conclusion. Tenses. It's just based on how important or what are you contributing to the scientific knowledge. What have you drawn from the results? Then when you are done, then you come to recommendations. So in thesis, recommendations is different. For example, if you're able to state a proper limitation, that's why you can also do proper recommendation, because you've stated something as limitation, then in recommendation, you recommend for them to build on that research. If you're not able to access a particular marker in recommendation, it's opposite. They recommend that then future studies should use this. Sometimes recommendations are part of conclusion. Mostly we do this during publications. But in TZ, you see recommendation as a separate section, and this is the last section of any thesis, any scientific writing. So, for example, you recommend that future research is needed to establish this. Future studies should take in account like that. Recommendation. Or you are recommending for policymakers. You are recommending that, pregnant women should be taking vitamin D. You are recommending this based on the study results. You see someone also writing recommendation, does not even matter the result. Everything is related to what data do you have? What are you concluding on? What are you recommending? Are you recommending that, they should take your finding that you have into practice for policy making? For what? Or they should do further research on it. So this aspect is very short, but it's very relevant. As I said, every aspect was once a beginner. And you have to make sure you follow us on all our pages. If you are still not following us, you have to follow up. We always try to be concise, straightforward, but very informative. If I don't know how many were following, so yeah, we've used like 40 minutes. The time was really fast. Any question? Do you have any question? I don't know if we are following. If we are following, put one in the chat. Do we have, okay, Harry, yeah, do we have any question? Or we're all okay? Good, good, good. So I think we're all following, which is good. So let's come to practical. So we've used like 45 minutes so far. So within the next 10 minutes, let's see some of the write-up that we have. Whatever we've discussed, how does it imply? So some of writing is dynamics. Sometimes you may not do all the right. So for example, let's look at this paper. So this paper was just published 3 days ago. In this paper, I look at validity and reliability of health promotion skill in Ghana. This was purely methodological study. So for your level, if you read this paper, you may not understand because it uses complex models where we talk about comeback alpha reliability text. It's, but what is the key thing? The key thing is for us to see whether what we've talked about has been started. So you could see that. Let's look at this first paragraph. In this study, the short form of adult health process was evaluated using KMO, matrix test of specificity, and EFA, while the reliability was assessed using comeback alpha. So what do you see? This is just a brief background of what have been done. So if someone skip introduction, skip abstract, and straight away came to discussion, the first sentence introduced to the person what the paper is about. Then we move on. The KMO and the bachelor test for was reported to be days and days respectively, allowing for EFO with organal rotations. The EFO reviewed the 5 points of this blah 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 blah. Then for the scalability, for skills reliability, combat alpha was evaluated for the whole days. So this paragraph is what I'm saying is that is the summary of the work. It consists of introducing your work and also stating your key results. So you could see that there's a lot of results in this data, but the key result we are going to discuss in the paper is what I've stated in the first paragraph. This, this is a manuscript for publication. In a typical thesis, so let me show you a thesis format. This thesis is about occupational health. That one we have chapter 5 discussion. Then the first one will be summary of findings, where again You introduce your key staffs, health workers, and this. Then you also state your key results. This is a master's work, and that's why it's a bit details. Again, some professors also don't know this, so they will tell you to remove this one, this summary. But it's a key starting for your discussion. So this summary of finding is just what reintroducing. So workers, so medical staffs are continuously exposed to disease causing pathogens like this disease. Occupational and safety health diseases. This study assess what occupational health and safety among medical professionals. So you could see this statement is just what telling what the paper is about and the study aim. Then it proceeds to see that this study found that over 90% of participants were these diseases. So from here is just a summary of a key result. It's not a repetition of the whole result. So that's what we mean when we say summary of the key results. So you could see that compared to thesis writing, where we said, oh, as a heading, if you come to publications, publication that you see any topic, everything is written once. So let me switch down. This is written. Yeah. Yeah, if you come to the discussion is continuous. Then, so all the key results we found there, then we now move to each paragraph, taking each result one after the other, depending on what the objective. Here it is again manuscript, so you will not see any subheadings. Discussion is continuous, but does not mean that there's no break. You see everything is in paragraph. So it means each key result are being discussed within what one paragraph. So for example, you see the second paragraph. That's invalidity assessment. The EFO result indicated that 5 factors on the scale, which includes life, diseases, stress. On contrary to this study, Chan et al. Use of cumulative factor analysis for assessing contrast facility, which supported 6 factors load, including disease, exercise, and stress. Also, contrary to this current research, the person vaccine disease is to work on it and therefore result this, including life appreciation and this. The loading factor of the Ghanaian version of the scale was different from what the original scale. So you see what is happening. We first stated our result, then we compare what did the persons found. Then getting to the last, we try to justify what we have found in. What did we found? Like that, like that. So by the time you finish, you justify that, therefore, we justify your findings. So the model here is just comparing to other work. What did they find? Are you also going to find? Then getting to the what is the implications? Relevant. Then when you are done with discuss, you move to another key result. Then you discuss. So each key result, as I said, standard writing is not a mix. You have to discuss each key result like that format. You state your results, you compare it to other people's work. So you could see references to what? Other people's work. Then what did they find? Did they find the same thing as yours, or it was contrary to yours? And what is the meaning? That's simply the basis of discussion. You see, it's simple, but it's very time consuming because you have to now see the result you found. Who have found that? Is it in Ghana? Is it in Africa? Is it contrary to your work? Or what is happening? You have to relate them, discuss the result one after the other, one after the other, based on your study health objectives. Then, as I said, this is manuscript, so you not even see subheading. So you could see that this limitation is at last. So this study is however limited by its majority of participants being university students. So although we are validating it in Ghana, we only included what? University students. Whilst we should have gone out to see those in the communities to help us to validate the health promotion. So we are biased because university students will have knowledge or will not be doing certain lifestyle factors, which may affect this what reliability or validity. So we stated it as what a limitation, calling that other what studies should be done in the communities. So, for example, young adult ages older within a remote community may have different what lifestyle, which may require what further modification of the revised version to further text for its validity. Similarly, these days is like that. So you see the trend. So it means that that's why I always say that you have to first graduate, you have to know what you have in class before you come to research. Because research is just combined effect of your theory that you know and adding out more and consistency. Then when and what is the overall clinical application? What we found, what is the clinical implications? Then you state it. That this study demonstrates the availability of this risk for assessing the degree of health promotion in that particular university student according to this. Like I just stating the benefits. Primary health care school days could be used to assess what the health promotion among what areas. Then before we came to what conclusion, what is the main conclusion thing? And what is the recommendation? What are we recommending? So here, recommendation is based on what? The objective. So the coastal validity of this skill needs to be investigated in few further or samples due to overall or variance of the total diseases. More of a Ghanaian-based health promotion skill like this, do you smoke and the rest should be completed or in the skill. Because this question was developed somewhere and we don't have some of the Ghanaian related. So if you want to adopt it, it means you have to ask some of the Ghanaian what question in order to assess their lifestyle. It becomes what a recommendation based on the study, based on the data that you found. I don't know whether we're on the same level and do we understand what we're doing. Do you have any question? If there's no question, like we all understood whatever is happening. And it's really a good news. Do you have any concerns, any questions? So the key take-home message is that discussion is we are justifying your work. You first state your results, you compare to other studies, then what? You state why your result is important. So after you've compared to other studies, whether it was similar or it is different, then the next thing is that you write about why you think your result is what is important. Because you have to be able to justify that, yes, the result you found is really of importance to the scientific community. So one, stating your results, it means that you have to understand the result. Because if someone did the analysis for you, you have to ask the person, what does this result mean? Then you're able to justify that, okay, this is the trend of the data. This is what I'm seeing. Is it the same thing in the literature? If no, why are you finding that? What is wrong? You have to discuss it. Then you state the scientific implications and you are good to go. So I think we will have to end here and we